Well, hi everybody. I'm Melissa C. I'm a recovered compulsive overeater. I am in New York, steamy hot New York. And I'm really happy to be here tonight. Happy to discuss the chapter, The Family Afterward. And, I always say, oh, it's a really important chapter, but it really is. This is a really important chapter because most of us have families and we recover and then it's okay, so like now what? There's a big book study that I'm a part of that, right? It's talking about what our vision is, right? That one currently is talking about what the vision is right now, what our lives are going to look like. And I think I can't necessarily focus on what the vision of my life is going to be unless I include how am I interacting with my family, because my family is, they've been placed in my life, I believe, by God, and I have an important role to play within my family. So I'm going to jump right into this chapter, give you just like a brief background on me. Uh, I've been a compulsive overeater, I think, for as long as I can remember. I've struggled with the food. I've had experiences, being a member of a family and and for me, my experience was actually I had a really good family growing up. I had a loving, wonderful home life as a child. And of course, in my self centeredness, in my selfishness and self centeredness, I did not interpret my home life to be that. I saw it very differently. And real or imagined, I'm not really sure, but I can tell you this: when I recovered, suddenly my family seemed like incredible, wonderful, better. I was like, well, surely these people have improved vastly. But I believe that it was largely my perspective of what my family was skewed. And then as I began to practice these principles in all my affairs, they had the opportunity to improve along with me. So I'm going to jump into the chapter now. Family Afterward, page 122 says this: wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means the opposite. All members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. And this involves a process of deflation. So the whole family doesn't have to treat us with kid gloves, afraid that we're going to binge if they treat us just like any other regular family member. Our families no longer, and this is the family afterward, right? So after what? After we've gotten well, right? After we have made a start, we've commenced this way of living. So now our families don't have to hide their stash of candy, right? Or tiptoe around us. In early abstinence, it might be that people gave us a free pass. Sometimes they do, but that doesn't last long. My experience was that did not last very long. And in a recovered state, which is the afterward period, we become a loving and tolerant parent, child, sister, brother, spouse, etc. And I think it's important for us to define tolerance because I used to think that tolerance meant that I'm going to somehow stomach, tolerate these people that are annoying to me. That was my perspective. I just have to tolerate them, But actually, what I found out is that tolerance means that I have reduced the sensitivity that I feel towards the rest of the world just being the rest of the world. I have a higher level, a threshold, as it would be, for the way that other people are. That's what it means to have tolerance. And I think, if there was like a drug interaction, right? Like something that you needed to take, sometimes people build up a tolerance to specific things, which means they require more to get the effect, right? Well, that's how it is for me with other people being how other people are. That the things that I used to say, oh, they're triggering me. This person's triggering me and I have to avoid them. And how do you deal with people who trigger you? And the interesting thing is, I, it's me that had to change. I heard someone say once that if you're getting triggered by everything, like, you know, well, put down put down the remote, right? It's like people had this remote that they could press the button and get you to react. Well, I can actually put the remote down so that I don't get the same reaction from people. And and so it also means for me that my ego is going to be deflated. That need that I have to have everything my way was my ego. And that's going to get deflated. And we sometimes refer to, I was told, my sponsor had said to me, that it's like, I was like king baby. That was like the phrase that was used. And king baby is emotionally immature, right? But a demanding ruler. So emotionally immature, but demanding and wanting to rule everything, filled with self importance. And in recovery, we are to not be the king baby anymore. We're supposed to, I always say, like, I feel like I grew up in recovery. I'm growing up. I'm a big girl now. I'm an adult now. Um, Page 122 says this: we find the more one member of the family demands that the others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. And so, what is to concede? Well, concede means to admit defeat and surrender. Well, of course, that's going to lead to discord, to disagreements, and a lack of harmony in a family because who wants to have to surrender, to a family member, right? And especially, by the way, one who's been king baby, one who's been emotionally immature, demanding everyone else, surrender to your very will, to your very whim. And so we have to make sure that we don't demand this from our families, that we no longer try to rule the roost. Page 122 says this, and why? Why? Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Is not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life rather than give? So I think about, for me, this really reminds me of in step three, where there's the stage director, right? And the stage director is forever trying to arrange everything to their liking. Why is that? Why is it that I would try to arrange everything to my liking? Is it because I want what's best for my family? Is it because I believe that what I want is best for my family? Well, sometimes yes. That might be true. Sometimes I believe I know what's best. But even that's flawed thinking. Believing that I know what's best for my family and that I have all the answers. And I think, like, this program taught me about humility. What do I even really know? Right? Especially when I'm trying to tell other people how to live their lives. And I couldn't even figure out how much food to eat. Right? I'm a grown woman who has to, yeah, I always say I have to measure and weigh blueberries. Like, what in the world makes me think that I know what's best for everybody when I don't even know how to feed my own body and do it, appropriately? So all I really know is my perspective. That's what I know. I know what I see, what my human, finite vision shows me. And, you know, so that's often my flaw, right? If I believe I know what's best, and I'm trying to get everybody to do what I believe is going to be in the best interest of them. That's true some of the time, but if I'm really honest, sometimes it's not even that I really care what's in the best interest of others. Sometimes it's true selfishness. I want what's in the best interest of me. I want my way because I want my way. I want it because I like it, because I like it this way and it feels good for me. And, in recovery, I found out I can't live that way anymore. I know I have to look at the world from an entirely different angle. That's what we're told. I must be rid of this selfishness or it will kill me. That's what we're told. Being selfish and lining everything up so it's to my satisfaction can actually kill me, can cause my own death. And if you remember in step 3, it says that selfishness is the root of our troubles. So I must get rid of it. And in how it works on page 62, it discusses this. It says, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. And there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. And so, since so much of this is happening, truly somewhat of an unconscious level, you're not even aware of it. I wasn't even aware of how much I was doing that. It wasn't deliberate. So, then how do I work around this? How do I work around something that's not deliberate? Well, we pray. We ask God. We always ask God, direct my thinking. Because when I'm thinking, it's flawed, right? It has the capacity, it has the potential to be problematic. So I ask God, please help me be open to your direction. And in the chapter Into Action, page 86, it says this: before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self pity, dishonest, and self seeking motives. So we ask God to help us with this. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. For after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life. So now I've got this thought life. My thoughts actually have a life, right? And they're placed on a much higher plane now. They're not living the same earthly life, my thoughts. They're up here. And when my thinking is cleared of wrong motives, then it's on that plane. So if I want to improve my relationships with my family, what I found the greatest thing that I did to improve my relationships with my family was to pray, was to include prayer in my life. Very specific, talking to God like God is my friend. Because that's what I got in this program, a relationship, someone who I can bring something powerful that I can bring my troubles to. And so when I pray for my family, it's no longer so that they bend to my will or do things my way, right? I don't tell God, I don't give God the knowledge of my will for him. Uh-uh. I ask God to give me the knowledge of his will for me. And so I ask God to help me see my family as he sees my family, to help me live in agreement with the assignment that he's assigning me. Very different. For me, I have prayers for all my family members, and I'll kind of share some of them because I think it's often helpful. And if it's something you would like, I'll try to, I won't be able to put it in the chat now, but I will do my best to get it out somewhere. But I have a prayer for my husband, right? So this is my family member. This is a prayer I have for my husband. And my prayers always start with gratitude. I thank God for my husband. Thank you, God, for my husband. And then I ask that he be a man of love and purpose. I believe that that's in agreement with God's will, that he feels your love and mine. I'm asking God, help my husband feel loved by you and by me. Give him wisdom and peace. Continue to guide him and me as we lead our family with love, strength, grace, patience, and peace. Free him from worry and grant him your peace. Direct his thoughts and his vision so that he sees the beauty and the good. Direct my thoughts and my vision so I see the beauty and the good in him. Let me see him through your eyes and teach me to be the partner you designed me to be. It's very different from me asking God to make my husband do what I want, right? Very different. And for my children, my prayer, I always like starting off with gratitude. I thank God for the assigning me this role as their mother. I say, thank you, God. You blessed me with people who I admire and adore. My children are the beautiful gifts of your all powerful creation. Thank you for giving their spirits and mine this time to be together here on earth. I know our earthly time is finite and not a moment should be wasted. Dear God, thank you, right? Thank you. And I often find myself, and I include this in my prayers, I say, Dear God, I often find myself attempting to advise and direct. That's a big thing I've done with my kids. I say things to try to fix, and it gets met with pushback. God, help me refrain from this behavior. I'm far more useful when I don't pretend to know all the answers for my children. Give me the strength to just listen and offer love. God, help me to set boundaries and guidelines, and then continue to give me the strength to honor and respect the rules that I set forth. Teach me how to lovingly discipline and how to tolerate the discomfort I feel when my children are uncomfortable. Help me parent without fear. And so those are some of the prayers that I have. I have others that come up very specific for specific situations with different family members. You know, um, with my mom who has passed, when I was helping in the care for my mom with dementia, I asked God to help me love her as she was right here and now. Because a big struggle that I had in my mother's dementia, especially early on, was trying to get her to be something different than she was. I wanted to like say the right magic words, do the right magic thing to get her to comply, right? To get her to follow along with what I believed she should do and to sort of snap her out of it. I had that thought, maybe if I pray the right prayer and if I take the right actions, I can snap my mother out of it. And when I kept doing that, I realized I was trying to play the director. I was trying to direct this. And one of the greatest things that I was able to do with God's help was no, accept the assignment and do what is in her best interest in the here and now. And that helped me tremendously throughout that process. Page 122 says this: years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is to some extent ill. And so, what is neurotic, right? It kind of helps to think about it. It's abnormally sensitive, obsessive, tense, and anxious. So, that's the effect that I have had on family members, making them really tense and anxious. When you live with someone who's unpredictable, I was unpredictable, up and down, wildly excited one moment, and then terribly depressed. It causes family members to be tense. They never know who they're going to get, right? It makes them nervous. They don't know how to be around them. And so I was overly sensitive and I relied constantly on everything going my way, which is bad enough, right? That's bad enough to do that to the family. But even worse, when the going my way changes like the weather, right? Because I was one way one minute and the other way the next minute. And it was like, I mean, I think even just food wise, one of the things that I did to my family, which was horrible, when I would do this thing on like Sunday night or Monday morning. That's it. No more of that crap in the house. We're getting rid of it. That is it. It's not coming in here anymore. No one is to eat McDonald's. There's no candy in this house. And I would throw everybody's stuff out. Right. And then all of a sudden, right, because that's not enough, that's not God's power. Then suddenly I'm eating those things, but I'm hiding it. I'm doing it on the outside. Right. And then when I can no longer hide it and do it on the outside, I started bringing it back in. And my loving husband who would say, I thought you told me we couldn't bring that in. I would attack him. I'd go for the jugular. Don't tell me what to eat. And, you're supposed to love me as I am. It was, It's, of course, you make people crazy. How could you not make people crazy? Page 123, the second paragraph says this: it's going to take time to clear away the wreck. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, the new structures will take years to complete. Oh boy, years. Like I read that, I'm like, years? Years. So we're going to have to be patient and diligent. Patient, one, for the family to notice and acknowledge the changes, because sometimes they don't. And patient for my own inconsistencies in changing. Had to be patient with myself. And what replaces the wreck is the result of the amends. When I make the amends, and then not just the grumbling, I'm sorry, right? Or even the melodramatic promises to change. Mm-mm. But it's especially when you actually change, when you actually put your words into action, when you start showing up differently as we live our amends, things we're told are actually going to be even better than they were before. They improve better than they could have ever been. Page 124 says this: that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. That's true. Only if one is willing to turn the past into good account. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them into assets. So I have to face and rectify my mistakes. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset of the family, and frequently it is almost the only one. And then I love this: cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. And I think that is just incredible, right? We're going to have better lives than before we ever got out of control. All the garbage of our past, all the terrible things that we've done. We don't have to be ashamed. We don't have to hide the truth of our experiences, even the bad ones. Our experience can save people's lives. And what this tells me is that none of it was a waste of time. None of the way that I lived before. I can only, when we say that the promises, when we say like we don't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it, I don't regret the past and I don't wish to shut the door on it. Why not? Because it turned out to be a gift, because it was my on the job training that allows me to help other people, right? And we can actually avert, prevent, and ward off death and misery for people. So we become people with a purpose. And people who have a purpose, who have a God centered mission, are an asset to the family. We're an asset to everybody in our lives, right? Page 125 says this: a man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favorably. So it is incredible. We can laugh at ourselves, and it's helpful to others when we don't take ourselves too seriously. And this is so useful when we're working with new sponsees and those that are starting their inventory process. We can share our own messes, and we can even do it in a humorous way that can help these fellows feel safe with us, right? When I don't take my own stuff too seriously, I open the door for others to be able to share without feeling deep shame. They know they're in a safe space. And, I am extremely sensitive. I have been extremely sensitive, which is self centered. Getting offended easily is self centered. Taking things personally is self centered, and it doesn't disappear overnight, you know. And I think, my family learned how to respond to inconsiderate remarks from watching how I responded, right? So I'm supposed to cut them some slack because I have been a horrible example, right? So when other people are less than perfect, I'm supposed to give them room to make mistakes and love them, right? And, you know, it says be careful with your criticism. That was something that I came apart for me because my criticism has often been, especially with my kids, has often been masked as advice. I'm just giving them some advice, right? And I've heard over and over again, and this really becomes something I think about a lot, unsolicited advice is criticism. When you tell people, I was just thinking it might be better if you blank, 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 and they never asked you, that's criticism. Nobody appreciates being criticized. It does not build close relationships. Many alcoholics, it says, are enthusiasts. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take as a rule one of two directions. He may either plunge into a frantic attempt to get on his feet, with business financially, or he may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks little or of anything else. And I have to say, in Overeaters Anonymous, what I've seen more often is, and experienced it myself, is people getting obsessed either by their job. And I did at one point. It was like, oh, I got really into my work, my job. I felt like that's where I could really shine, and I had all this new energy and enthusiasm. Or here's the other thing, getting obsessed by healthy eating and by my body, by my changing body. And the other one is being laser focused on recovery, on recovery, on doing 12-step work, right? On being a part of the 12-step fellowship. And both of this, all of this can leave the family wondering where they fit in. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. That's what we're told. He is not likely to get far in any direction if he fails to show unselfishness and love under his own roof. So I want to talk about exert for a moment, because exerting means to put forth strenuous, vigorous action and effort. So I have to put forth that kind of effort within my home as well. What I found out for me is that although I love doing this work, I mean, this is a dream come true. First of all, I love to talk. I love nothing more than talking and having people listen, right? That feels really good. Um, and I love doing this. Means the world to me. But I also have a husband, and I also have children. And I cannot do this at the expense of them. And I've learned through my sloppy mistakes how to balance. Early on in the pandemic, when Zoom seemed to be and it's a wonderful gift where we have now the opportunity to do service right in our own homes. It's powerful and it's great. What a wonderful vehicle. But I also found myself constantly separating from the family, you know, on the computer, endlessly. Um, Not participating at times with my husband, not participating at times with my kids. There were periods in this house where I used to do all my Zoom meetings downstairs. I had this lovely room set up. And, but what would happen is I would shush the rest of the family so that you all could hear me. Right. And okay, that's okay a couple of times, but every Sunday when my husband wanted to watch the game, no, it was not really living in this family afterward. And so while this work is powerfully important for me and I don't neglect it, I also had to figure out a balance. I had to figure out a way that I was still living in agreement with what God assigned me. And God assigned me wife, mother, sister, daughter, just as much as God assigned me this, right? So unselfishness means generous and altruistic. right? Generous and altruistic. If I'm unselfish with my husband, that means I do my best to put his needs ahead of my needs. I'm generous with my time and with not having my way. I know this sounds, for me, I read this and I'm like, what? I'm a feminist. That is not okay, right? And it sounds like we're being told to become doormats, but that's not it at all. It's not it at all. And oftentimes, my fear was that I was going to be too giving. I was going to give too much of myself. I was afraid that I was going to be taken advantage of. They're going to take advantage of me. But not so, because we know that we're not servile or scraping, right? We're told that. We're not servile or scraping. We're not beneath other people. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. But if there's a choice between two things, and one choice benefits my spouse more than my choice, then I'm directed to demonstrate unselfishness, right? So it's like if we're going to watch something, sometimes it means, okay, okay, watch, we'll watch what you watch. Or even the temperature in the house. That's been a big one because generally I'm freezing. And my husband is like hot. He's always hot. And I've learned, all right, for me, that means put on another layer. Like I can't jack the heat all the way up. I have to practice some of my own unselfishness. He'd probably laugh if he heard me say that. He'd be like, are you kidding me? I'm always conceding to you. But I think more and more as I do this work, I am much more agreeable. And I believe, in step three, where I really turned my will and my life over to the care of God, then if I live in agreement with God's will for me, meaning I love and give to my family, I do think God gave me a family to love. I do believe that. That's aligned with what I believe. Then I don't have to worry about such trivial concerns as being taken advantage of because I'm in God's care. My God is a caring God. And if I follow his will, then I don't have to worry about the consequences of being too giving or too kind. Now, I'm not talking about living in a family with abusers. That's not the situation here. That is an entirely different situation. I'm talking about a normal, healthy, lots of self centered people under one roof kind of family, right? Normal, basic, right? So I don't have to worry about being taken advantage of. What I found is that when I really commit myself to living in agreement with God's will, what God does is He gives me boundaries and guidelines. He helps me, He gives me what I need. And I've learned, when I set up boundaries and guidelines with people, no matter who they are, those boundaries are my responsibility, nobody else's. I am responsible. If I put up boundaries and I set up guidelines, then I can't get angry when they're not respecting my boundaries. Ah, they're not their boundaries, they're mine. I'm the one who needs to live in agreement with my own boundaries. And, we know that there are difficult wives and families, but the man who was getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. Ugh, I read this and I think, okay, this chapter just keeps on saying, oh, you don't like the way your family's behaving? Oh, you don't like the way your kids are behaving? You don't like the way your husband might mistrust you or question your motives? How did you contribute to that? What was your contribution to this? And if you remember our amends, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. And our 10th step reminds us that we must take the lead. My job to lead, right? The place where I always behaved the worst for me was in the privacy of my own home, for sure. I was kind to strangers. I was generally kind to strangers. I would put on a smile. I baked cupcakes for the whole world, for the PTA. I spent time with everyone else's kids. While I was the Girl Scout leader, I was busy putting on these great big productions of being this incredible giving mom and neighbor, put on elaborate parties and shows and events, but I gave my family the worst of me. That's the truth. I threw temper tantrums. I let my husband take on much of the household responsibilities. And this has to be addressed in the family afterward. We must be the kinds of mothers, wives, daughters, etc., that God intended us to be. It's not so spiritual of me to ignore my family, to put on a show for other people, to do great things for other people. Page 127 says this: family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without heated arguments, self pity, justification, or resentful criticism. So, when we have things to discuss with our families, we have to be looking to build up, not tear down, and we're gentle in our demeanor and in our words. So, if I'm not able to talk without arguing, fault finding, harboring a resentment, then I wait until my emotional sobriety is back in check. And I was thinking back when my daughter was a teenager and I was really trying to put this into action. My daughter would say to me, "Aren't you going to say anything?" Like we would have this like fight, right? And then I would get quiet because I'd remember I'm not supposed to criticize. I'm supposed to take a step back and not harbor resentments, right? And so I would get quiet and she would say, "Aren't you going to say anything?" And I have to be mindful to not turn the talk for opportunities for me to use my verbal skills to manipulate. And everybody has their strengths. And I've been really I words are my strength. And so I've used that as a weapon against my family, kind of twisting and manipulating words to get my way. So I had to learn, shh, be quiet, be quiet. That was the hardest thing for me. I also used self pity as a weapon. If you expect others to give you permission to act in ways that are hurtful, unkind, and selfish because you've had a hard time, that's self pity. I want to stress there's a difference between self pity and grief. And this always kind of comes up because they can get confusing. Grief is a normal response to something sad happening. Being sad is not the defect. Grief may cause us to temporarily retreat into ourselves, but it allows others to be comforting and to receive our comfort. And at some point, we invite others back in. We might take a moment to retreat, but pretty soon the invitation to come on in close to us again is there. And, you know, I found for myself that self pity was a response to grief that really just prolonged the pain. It pushed people away. And I think it's grief that turns onto the grief stricken. It turns around on us. And I've lived in self pity and self justification, and that is not the way to bring peace into your family. When you say to yourself, I have every right to fill in the blank, or I have, you know, every right to feel this, and I have every right not to do this. And it's the things that you should not be doing. That's self pity, right? And my experience was that I would show up to family events with my mental list of hurts and grief. I would show up at my dinner table this way. I would pout or smile or fake smile. And, it's the same kind of thing, like eating nothing in front of others and then eating in the bathroom, right? Because I couldn't stand how I was feeling. And I used my own personal losses as my free pass for not being the person I knew I was supposed to be. And then I would criticize others for their parenting, for their shallowness, for their opinions, etc. So, page 128 says this: giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. And I love this because guiding principles are any principles or presets that guide someone through life in all circumstances, irrespective of what's going on around us. I think about it like this: whatever is going on around me, I've got my guiding principles, which is to remain giving no matter what. And if you think about guiding principles, these are principles we lean on when we need guidance, when things are hard, and so when there's bumps in the road, that's when we need these principles. What's the point of having a guiding principle if you not rely on them when you need its guidance, right? So that's where it's always hardest to put it into action. Um, and I think, my self-centeredness can no longer be my guiding principle. It must be other centeredness is my new guiding principle. And it's not just in the fellowship. That's why this is called the Family Afterward. It talks next about a family member having a profound spiritual experience, and that overnight he becomes a different person. And it says here that about indulging in spiritual intoxication, like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. That's what happened to me. My pick struck gold. Joy at the release of a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels, or in this case, the mother feels he struck something better than gold. And for a time, he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load, which will pay dividends only if he minds it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire. So I am told that I can have all of the wonderful gifts of this program so long as whatever gifts I receive, I hand them out freely to those around me. And if I do it that way, it's like it multiplies. And I think about that, it sort of makes me think about love. Love is like that. It's not a piece of pie that runs out. The more love I give, the more I receive. The more love I hand out, the more love that's available. And that's the same way it is with living this program. You know, um, I want to kind of think about this too. It talks about we're not a glum lot. I love that. We're not supposed to be miserable. We're supposed to have joy. God, I don't believe God relieved me of the obsession of food, right? Merciless obsession of the food and of, for me, morbid obesity, so that I would be in misery. We are not a glum lot. And if newcomers could see no joy or fun in our existence, they wouldn't want it. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We try not to indulge in cynicism over the state of the nations. Hello. Really important, right? Not to be cynical about what's going on in the world. That is not my mission. Nor do we carry the world's troubles on our shoulders. I cannot carry the world's troubles. I believe for myself, God is in charge. I might not like the way things are at different points in time with different people, right? I may have a different view for the world at large, whatever that might be. My mission is not to carry the world's troubles on my shoulders, to not be cynical about the state of the nations. I'm actually supposed to be a beacon of optimism and joy, to have good humor, to feel delight, right? No matter what's going on about around me. Remember, these are my guiding principles. So when things are hard, that's when we need the guidance of these principles. We're supposed to be happy. It says, let each family play together or separately as much as their circumstance warrant. We are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. Guys, God wants us to be happy. We're told here, God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And it's clear we made our own misery. God didn't do it, right? So don't become a deliberate manufacturer of your own misery. Don't try to create more misery. So we're supposed to be happy. I didn't recover, so to be miserable. In my family, we laugh together. We have fun together. We listen to music together. We poke, we laugh, we make jokes about each other. I'm just going to tell you this, for my husband and myself, we go dancing together. We like to go hear live music together. When we go out to dinner, I don't like going out to dinner anymore, but I go because my husband enjoys it. I let him poke as much fun as he wants at me when I order because it's pretty comical to hear me order, right? And he makes a joke with the waitress, like, oh boy, get a load of this one. You ready for her? And I laugh. I don't take myself so seriously anymore. And we can have fun. And I think the greatest gift I can give my family and my entire community is to be upbeat and cheery. And with that, I pass. Thanks.